January 3rd, 2009. The Times, 03 Jan 2009. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. 3 months after Lehman Brothers collapsed, a mysterious figure published a document. 9 pages. Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. No banks, no governments, no intermediaries. Freedom embedded in code. The author never revealed their identity. They used a fake name, Satoshi Nakamoto. But here is what they don't tell you. One person controls 1 million bitcoins. 1 million. Worth over $100 billion. The top 100 wallets control 15% of all Bitcoin that will ever exist. 4 companies control 90% of all Bitcoin mining. 3 exchanges control access to the entire market. Decentralized? Bitcoin was supposed to escape the system. But what if it became exactly what it promised to destroy? Who controls Bitcoin? This is not about technology. This is about power. And the question nobody wants to answer. Most people believe Bitcoin was created by a genius, a libertarian, an anarchist, a cypherpunk, someone who wanted to free humanity from the grip of central banks. That is the story, and parts of it are actually true. Let's go back to October 31st, 2008, exactly 6 weeks after Lehman Brothers collapsed. A person using the name Satoshi Nakamoto posted a white paper on a cryptography mailing list. The title, Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. The idea was simple. No central authority, no banks, no government control. Just math. Cryptographic proof instead of trust. A ledger shared by everyone, and transactions verified by a network of computers around the world. And the most important part, a limited supply. 21 million coins, never more. No central bank could print more. No government could inflate it away. This was the promise. On January 3rd, 2009, Satoshi mined the first Bitcoin block, the Genesis block, and inside the code they left a secret message. The Times, 03 Jan 2009, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks. This was not a coincidence. This was a statement. Bitcoin was born as a protest against the bailouts, against the banks, against the system that saved Wall Street and sacrificed everyone else. For 2 years, Satoshi worked on Bitcoin. They communicated only through forums and emails, never a phone call, never a video, never a real name. Then, in April 2011, Satoshi disappeared. Their last message was, "I've moved on to other things," and they were never heard from again. But they left behind something extraordinary. 1 million bitcoins, untouched, unmoved, frozen in the original wallets. At today's prices, worth over $100 billion. The largest fortune ever created by a single person, and nobody knows who they are. For 15 years, people have searched for Satoshi. The theories are endless. Some say it was Hal Finney, a famous cryptographer and the first person in history to receive a Bitcoin transaction. Finney died in 2014 from ALS, and he denied being Satoshi until the very end. Others say it was Nick Szabo, a computer scientist who designed BitGold, a precursor to Bitcoin. He also denied it. Then there is Craig Wright, an Australian businessman who claimed for years that he was Satoshi. He provided no proof, and in 2024, a UK court ruled that he was lying. Some believe Satoshi was not one person, but a group. Maybe the NSA, maybe the CIA, maybe a team of mathematicians working in secret. The truth is, nobody knows, and that is by design. Because if Satoshi's identity were revealed, governments could arrest them, regulators could sue them, and the entire Bitcoin narrative could collapse. Satoshi's anonymity is not a bug. It is the system's greatest protection. But here is the real question. Does it matter who Satoshi is? Because even if we never find them, we can still answer a much more important question. Who controls Bitcoin today? Bitcoin is supposed to be decentralized, right? No single authority, no central control. Power distributed across millions of users. That is the promise. But the reality is very different. Let's look at the numbers. According to blockchain analysis from Glassnode and Chainalysis, the top 100 Bitcoin addresses control over 3 million Bitcoins. That is 15% of the total supply that will ever exist. The top 1,000 addresses control over 40%, and the top 10,000 control over 70%. This is not decentralization. This is concentration. The same wealth inequality we see in traditional finance, except in Bitcoin it is worse. These wallets are called whales, and they have enormous power. When a whale moves, Bitcoin moves. In 2021, when Elon Musk announced Tesla would accept Bitcoin, the price surged 20%. When he reversed the decision 6 weeks later, the price crashed 35%. One tweet, one person. That is not decentralization. That is market manipulation. And the whales are not just individuals anymore. They are institutions. MicroStrategy, a software company, holds over 200,000 Bitcoins, more than any other public company. Tesla holds over 10,000. Block, formerly Square, holds over 8,000. And then there are the silent whales, wallets that have never moved, wallets linked to early miners, wallets that could belong to Satoshi. If those wallets ever activated, the market would panic, because the entire Bitcoin supply is built on one assumption, that Satoshi's coins will never move. But what if they do? Bitcoin is not controlled by banks. It is controlled by miners. Miners are the computers that verify transactions and secure the blockchain. Anyone can become a miner. All you need is a computer and electricity. That was true in 2009. It is not true today. Bitcoin mining has become an industrial operation. Giant warehouses, thousands of machines, millions of dollars in infrastructure, and it is concentrated in the hands of a few. According to data from the Cambridge Center for Alternative Finance, 4 mining pools control over 60% of Bitcoin's hash rate. Hash rate is computing power. The more hash rate you control, the more influence you have over the network. The largest pool, Foundry USA, controls over 30%. Just one company. If Foundry and 3 other pools decided to work together, they could, theoretically, control Bitcoin. They could refuse to process certain transactions. They could reverse recent blocks. They could rewrite the ledger. This is called a 51% attack. And while it has never happened to Bitcoin, it is technically possible. The system is only as decentralized as the miners, and the miners are not decentralized. Most mining happens in the United States, followed by China, Kazakhstan, and Russia. Governments can regulate miners. They can tax them, shut them down, control them. In 2021, China banned Bitcoin mining. Overnight, half of Bitcoin's hash rate disappeared. The network survived, but the message was clear. Bitcoin is not immune to government power. Even if Bitcoin is decentralized, most people do not interact with it directly. They use exchanges: Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, Gemini. These platforms allow you to buy, sell, and store Bitcoin, but they are centralized companies, and they control access. According to CoinGecko, the top 3 exchanges handle over 70% of all Bitcoin trading volume. Binance alone handles 40%. That means if Binance goes down, the entire market freezes. And it has happened. In 2022, FTX, the 3rd largest exchange, collapsed. $8 billion vanished. Millions of users lost everything. The founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, was sentenced to 25 years in prison for fraud. But the Bitcoin never returned. Because when you store Bitcoin on an exchange, you do not actually own it. The exchange owns it. You just have a claim. And if the exchange goes bankrupt, your claim is worthless. This is the paradox. Bitcoin was designed to eliminate intermediaries, but most people still rely on them. Because using Bitcoin without an exchange is difficult, confusing, and risky. So the power shifts back to the companies, to the gatekeepers, to the system. In 2024, something changed. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission approved Bitcoin ETFs, exchange-traded funds. This allowed traditional investors, pension funds, hedge funds to buy Bitcoin without ever touching the blockchain. BlackRock, the largest asset manager in the world, launched the iShares Bitcoin Trust. Within months, it became the largest Bitcoin ETF in history. Fidelity, Invesco, Franklin Templeton all launched Bitcoin funds. By the end of 2024, institutional investors held over 1 million Bitcoins. Wall Street had arrived. And this changes everything, because Bitcoin was created to escape Wall Street. But now, Wall Street owns it. BlackRock does not care about decentralization. They care about returns. They do not care about financial freedom. They care about profit. And when institutions control the supply, they control the price. Bitcoin is no longer a rebellion. It is an asset class. And like every asset class, it is controlled by the people with the most capital. So, Who controls Bitcoin? The answer is not one person. It is a network of power. Satoshi controls 1 million coins. Whales control 40% of the supply. 4 mining pools control 60% of the hash rate. 3 exchanges control 70% of trading volume. And Wall Street is buying everything it can. Bitcoin is not decentralized. It is differently centralized. Instead of one central bank, you have a few hundred entities with enormous power. And unlike central banks, they operate with no transparency, no accountability, no oversight. At least with the Federal Reserve, you know who is in charge. With Bitcoin, you have no idea. And that is not freedom. That is a different kind of control. Bitcoin has survived for 15 years. It has been declared dead 474 times. And yet, it is still here, worth over $1 trillion. But the question remains, what is it actually for? It is not a currency. Almost nobody uses Bitcoin to buy things. Transaction fees are too high. Processing times are too slow. It is not a hedge against inflation. Bitcoin crashed 50% in 2022, while inflation hit 9%. It is not independent from the system. It is traded on Wall Street, regulated by governments, controlled by institutions. So what is it? Bitcoin is a narrative, a story about escaping the system, a story that enough people believe to keep the price going up. And as long as the story holds, Bitcoin will survive. But narratives are fragile. They collapse when trust disappears. And trust is already cracking. Governments are launching central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, digital dollars, digital euros, digital yuan, controlled by governments, programmable, traceable, censorable. Everything Bitcoin was designed to oppose. But with one advantage: governments can force you to use them. Bitcoin cannot. And when the next financial crisis hits, will people turn to Bitcoin or will they turn to their governments? The answer will determine Bitcoin's future. Bitcoin was born from the ashes of 2008, a promise of freedom, a rebellion against central banks. But 15 years later, the whales control the supply, the miners control the network, the exchanges control the access, and Wall Street controls the narrative. Decentralization was always an illusion, because power always concentrates. Whether it is a central bank or a blockchain, someone always ends up in control. The question is not who created Bitcoin. The question is who benefits from you believing it is free.